Traveling the Vortex.
We've joined Lethbridge-Stewart and the 5th Operational Corps as they defend London and the world as they arrive at episode 292. Grab your aluminum foil and make some hats. How are you guys?
I'm good.
That open did not go how I expected it to. But that's okay. I'm going to let it just go.
Hang on, let me adjust my tinfoil hat.
Got to make sure it's nice and clean and covers everything.
Make sure it covers everything, and I have the antenna peak on it.
Yes, yes. The antenna peak is
crucial.
Key.
Crucial.
Anybody else picking up Mets games?
For what? Last year?
Yeah. It's game 5.
Did you guys have a good week?
I'm Glenn, by the way.
Oh, yeah. You didn't introduce yourself.
You didn't either.
Yeah, I did. I said I'm Keith.
No, you didn't. I said,
didn't.
how are you guys?
You just said, how are you guys?
I'm Keith.
I'm Shaun.
The aluminum foil's messing with my brain.
Our brains are scrambled this week.
Yeah.
I keep trying to eat my hat.
You're not supposed to use leftover aluminum foil. You should get new so you don't have food crusted to your head.
That's why I smell like Chipotle.
Shaun's is shaped like a swan. It's really impressive.
Peking duck.
If you take it off, he flaps around.
I was trying to add some culture.
I like it.
Instead, Glenn keeps pointing his phone at me and trying to capture me like a Pokemon.
Did you guys do anything this week?
The lack of a periscope for this segment may lead you to believe we're not actually wearing tinfoil hats.
What?
But we are.
I watched a couple movies.
What'd you watch?
First up, I watched Horns, which was really compelling.
Oh, the Ratcliffe.
And you can tell it was written by Stephen King's son because it goes off the deep end. Keep in mind, the shallow end is a dude growing horns.
Oh, bother.
But the entire thing is so compelling that you just... I don't know what's going on, but it's just... Wow.
That's the word I've heard.
It really,
compelling.
especially throughout most of it. And it kind of has a Gone Girl feel to it because the idea is this guy is accused of killing his girlfriend and he's adamant that he didn't. And then we watched The Finest Hours. That, Chris Pine, Coast Guard Rescue movie.
Coast Guard Rescue. How was it?
It was good. I didn't love it, but it was really interesting and definitely worth seeing at least once. The action is good in it. Everyone does a fantastic job acting-wise. Yeah, I'd highly recommend it. And then the last thing we watched was Bat Soup, the Ultimate Edition.
Glenn, did you watch anything? Did you do anything?
About halfway through Volume 6 of Skins, and we're almost finished with Rebels Season 1.
Ah, are you guys liking Rebels?
Yeah, immensely. I think I'm at the point now where I think I like it better than Clone Wars. Than all of Clone Wars. Even though I love Clone Wars.
Today we went and saw Star Trek Beyond.
And?
I loved it. I cannot give you high enough praise for this movie. It is far and away the strongest of the reboot Kelvin Universe movies. It completely washed away the bad taste Into Darkness left.
Yep.
It feels like Star Trek.
Mainly by ignoring Into Darkness.
A lot, yeah. But
that's how it washes it away.
They meant this is almost in a way going to sound... I almost hate to say this, because when you describe a movie as a really good episode of the TV show, you kind of get that negative connotation automatically. It's like, oh, well, it's just... But...
I kind of thought that while watching it, that it felt like a bigger, longer, really good episode of the TV show.
It feels like a really good episode of the TV show, and not just, it feels like a Star Trek. They're down, they're on a planet again, and they use the crew really well because they break them up, and yet, unlike some of the other ones, the dynamics of the characters really come out. There's a whole great, I mean, you get a Kirk McCoy bit. You get a McCoy Spock bit. You get a Kirk Spock bit. Yeah. Everybody had something to do. Yeah. Just really, 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 really loved it and was so excited and felt they knocked it out of the park. But, Beyond is awesome. Go see it. So, a full review will be coming at some point when I get my thoughts in order and get them typed up. But, man, it was a good movie.
Well, should we move on to news?
Sure.
Our bit of news is kind of sad this week. Last week we announced that Julian Glover was going to come to Kansas City Comic-Con in 2 weeks, and now he's had to cancel.
Aww.
So hopefully you didn't run out and buy tickets just for him, because I'm sorry.
Cough, Glenn. Cough.
I didn't. I almost purchased this week. So that, I've got a little extra money this week. Maybe I ought to get those tickets now. Glad I didn't.
Yeah. So
we had Julian Glover as a gift for all of 3 days.
Yep.
It would have been glorious.
It would have. 'Tis a shame. 'Tis a shame. And that's it for news. I really didn't see much. There's some clickbait articles if you want to go read them, but we're not going to bother with them here.
I was going to say, speaking of the 3 days news, did you hear Clara might be coming back to Doctor Who? Oh, wait. No, she's not. I'm glad they quashed that one early.
They need to do that. They need to quash those articles as soon as they try to even get some ground. Don't let that fester like that Matt Smith rumor.
He only let it fester for like a week until somebody asked him about it.
A week was too long.
Yeah. There was also
It had to have been more than a week. Well, maybe not. I was just saying because we talked about it a week and then came back and said, told you so, but it had already been reported on early the week before that.
Yeah.
But if he addressed it early the week after that, then we wouldn't have addressed it until the weekend. So
I don't know how much of that is the actor's responsibility to quash something. It's like,
it's
is
not.
that what they're saying about me?
It's not, but it really it's the BBC should come in and say, of course, if the BBC comes in, maybe that loses some traction for the all news is good news, or all press is good press. I don't know.
Or you're on the risk of being J.J. Abrams. No, he's totally not playing Khan. What are you, crazy? We wouldn't do that.
He learned from that.
I actually saw a very interesting article that defended that decision in particular. And it's like, if you spend X number of millions of dollars making a movie and you go through all this kind of stuff, and then fans being as obsessive as they are, and it pointed to both Star Trek and Game of Thrones fans who were, apparently when Sansa was writing the letter, I'm going to spoil a moral part of season 6 here, so you guys don't, if you haven't seen it yet, when she was writing the letter about blah, 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 well, the prop department actually wrote the letter, and it says, you promised to come help and, send writers from the Vale or wherever the thing was at. So everybody was freeze-framing it and looking at it upside down and doing all this kind of stuff and figured out that's what's going to happen. And so there were all these fans that were just like, yeah, they're going to get help from the Vale. And then, of course, they do. And it's like, at what point does being a fan and being the fanatical, we run that tight walk between being so excited over something and then spoiling it for ourselves versus being so excited for something and coming up with a fan theory and then being indignant and upset that that's not how it went because all the evidence pointed to this. So when you have something like that in a multi-million-dollar big summer movie and everybody figures out that it's Khan, you want to protect the secret. So you go, no, of course it's not Khan, and you lie about it. And it's like, can we really begrudge him for wanting to try and protect the secret, even though maybe that was the wrong way to go about doing it? But
I don't think you can do it anymore. We're in an era now where there are no surprises in film, and there can't be because there's interconnectivity and obsessive fan people.
Some film can do a good job. Force Awakens was able to keep things tight-lipped about something that happened. So I think it depends on the film you're making and
I think, though,
the fans you have.
It depends on. I mean, as soon as you hire a cast of familiars, there's no surprises.
Well,
so you think, and then you do get to put your surprise. When you hire a brand new cast, you've got a Benedict Cumberbatch coming in, and everybody's speculating automatically. That's where you're going to land on who's played.
Yeah.
So
and that is a good point. That plot points and casting are two different types of spoilers.
Or you run the risk if you hire a returning familiar actor for a role that he died. Oh, well, I wonder what's happening there.
Yeah.
Side note, I have used your argument on how to fix Into Darkness 3 separate times this week.
Oh.
And everybody has said, yeah, that really does help. Why didn't they do that?
Yeah, that's what they should have done.
Doesn't fundamentally change the fact that it was bad writing to begin with.
And blatant rip-offs.
Yeah, well, that was actually Medina's problem with this article when I said, well, maybe JJ didn't need to lie, and then he came back with, yeah, but that means you're questioning your creative direction right off the bat, because maybe you shouldn't have done that. If you feel the need to lie about it, maybe you're still going, maybe this isn't a good idea. It's like, that's true.
That's a good point.
Sorry, I'm done with Star Trek. Anyway.
There's also the obligatory article that somebody asked Joss Whedon when he was going to direct an episode of Doctor Who. Did you see that?
I did see that.
His response was, come ask me again when it's a woman. Or Idris Elba. Because his whole thing turned the whole panel. He would give an answer, or Idris Elba. For everything. That's Conversations for a Cause. It's a really good panel. Go watch it. Well, should we move on to feedback then, since there's no other news?
Yeah, let's do some feedback.
Not really some feedback, but we're going to read Ben's review on Goodreads of Showstoppers. He wrote, my only complaint with the story was the cheesy German accent writing. Got a little thick at times. Here's the thing, though. It was supposed to. I really enjoyed this one.
Thank you, Ben.
And of course, you can weigh in on Goodreads and the Goodreads Book Club, the Traveling the Vortex Goodreads Book Club, or you can send us feedback at feedback@travelingthevortex.com, or on our website. We got a send us feedback tab, or you can reach out to us on Twitter or Facebook. Twitter is @TravelVortex, and Facebook is Traveling the Vortex.
Just a footnote to that. As of this recording, Showstoppers has not been elected the August Book of the Month.
That is correct.
So, if you go there to put feedback, you'll have to put it on Showstoppers.
On your review of
your review of Showstoppers, and then let us know that it's there. So we'll try to keep an eye on those, but we don't always, when they get kind of muddled in all of the different reviews of people that aren't necessarily listeners, it might be tricky. But if it ends up being the Book Club of the Month, which it sounds like it's winning at this point, if it ends up being the Book of the Month, you can go ahead and go put it in discussion, and we'll know to go there and look for it.
Yes.
I suppose that being said, we should mention that we're going to sound the spoiler horn now, because our show today is all about the Showstoppers and the short...
The Band of Evil.
The Band of Evil. So if you haven't read those yet, we're going to talk about them.
Well, let's start with The Band of Evil. Lethbridge-Stewart is called in to investigate the rock group Totem Pole and their lead man, Oscar Mamana. Could aliens be playing with the crowd at the Empire Pool in Wembley?
Yes, they could be.
Yeah.
And they are.
Totally could be.
I didn't love this one. It was okay. It wasn't wonderful, but it wasn't horrible. It just kind of was for me.
Yeah, it's kind of... I liked certain elements of it. It was a fun read. I liked the light-hearted tone to the book, or to the short. And I was excited that Sally at least started off like she was going to be kind of a major player, and I was really looking forward to that, because I didn't realize how much I want Sally to do something more than just be Lethbridge-Stewart's girlfriend. So when it starts and it seems like she's kind of the thrust of the story, I went, oh, this will be fun. Okay, cool. And then unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on your point of view, she just becomes yet another hostage, and Lethbridge-Stewart has to save her, which... I don't know. From a functionality standpoint, I get it. I mean, the series does have his name on it. I expect him to come in and be the hero at some point. But it
Well,
felt a little too damsel in distress-y and
She
not.
does get some nice moments in it.
She has a couple of nice moments, but yeah, it's not like,
It would have been great
climbing the ladder when the guys behind it, they're climbing up to the roof, and it's like, okay, any moment now she's going to lash out and just face kick him and try and make an escape, and it didn't happen. And I don't know, I just wanted a little bit more out of her from this one.
I'm in the exact same boat. In fact, I was the same way. The only thing I liked about this book was the fact that Sally gets more time. Unfortunately, it doesn't go far enough with her, and I think she does get reduced to damsel in distress at the end. And I disagree with, you've got his name on it, you've got to come and be the hero at some point.
Not for these shorts.
No, definitely not for these shorts. And we just had Beast of Fame Rock last year that was almost a Ann Travers extravaganza we kept talking about how little Lethbridge-Stewart was in that at all. So, and his name is on that book. So I disagree. I think when you're doing the short stories, you should be able to do the peripheral characters completely. When we had the one that was before Moonblink, In His Kiss, that was a story about Jemima. I mean, it was a brand new character, and the entire story was about her. Now, it was a lot of backstory, and there wasn't a lot of heroism, but she did have some heroic aspects to her, things that she did, made choices that she made that were the right choices for the character. So, I think you can take in fact, when I started reading Band of Evil, I thought Band of Evil, yeah, Band of Evil. I can't want to say Band of Brothers. That's at HBO. Band of Evil. And I saw Sally, and I thought, oh, okay, great. This will be a Sally story, and it starts to be a Sally story, but then it just kind of meanders back into. And overall, I thought the premise was silly. It was very Saturday morning cartoon for me. I thought that the bad guys were very.
What do you got against Cold Slither?
bad.
There's a joke for you G.I. Joe fans.
The bad guys were very one-dimensional, not even two-dimensional. I know you can't do a lot with a short story, but the premise of the bad guys wasn't even developed at all. It wasn't even. There was so little substance to it that I can't say that I cared.
They worked so hard to get Lethbridge-Stewart in the correct situation. They didn't focus on the story that warranted him to be there.
That's a good point. Yeah.
It felt like they spent so much time maneuvering the pieces to, okay, we need to get Sally here and Lethbridge-Stewart here so we can go save her, and they didn't think about what these aliens were trying to do.
Yeah, that's just kind of excellent point. That's excellent.
In a way, I think with a short story that can be forgiven. I mean, I'm okay, kind of like with Black Eggs.
It should be able to, but
I don't mind being dropped in the middle of the action.
Well, and
just kind of roll with it. And I liked the fact that
that's a great point of. Just drop him in the action. We don't need to maneuver him into position.
Yeah, which I think is exactly what Keith's saying, because the other problem that I had with this is the fact that there's not enough action going on here. If this had been a fun little quick 20-page, there's lots of action like the one with set at Christmas time. There's not a lot of.
You can excuse the lack of plot for more action.
Yeah, there's not a lot of villain development there, and we don't get to know a lot about what the adversary is in that. However, it continues to pace along and do lots of fun things and give us a lot of different. This was basically a capture and escape, and that's all this was. And thwart the bad guys in the end, which I would hope happens because you always kind of want that in the story, but there wasn't enough. It was just kind of meandering and very Saturday morning cartoon. Good try. Who wrote this?
like we're not going to talk about the fact that they have a jetpack.
Yes. Who wrote this? And that was,
Roger J. Simmonds and Shaun Russell.
Oh, good try, guys. I mean, I don't want to disparage any author, but that's writing something, but this wasn't my cup of tea.
I did like the fact that for all of the ineffectualness that we tend to see from Unit and the early days of the Fifth Corps about going to go do something, it was kind of nice to see a very tactical, quick. We're here. We've got the building cordoned off. They were professional in this one. We boom, 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 and then we saved everybody on the roof. And it was kind of like that's not as opposed to we tend to see a lot of the I'm scrambling to pull troops together in order to go combat whatever this is. And so maybe the fact that it was in London, or I assume Wembley is at least close by, one of the suburbs. Forgive me for my lack of English geography again.
And this isn't the Wembley incident that's referenced.
And still not the Wembley incident referenced. Still waiting for that. But
Wembley's already. Andy already kind of tipped us off that Wembley has already happened in other literature, and we just never have gotten there yet.
Yeah,
yeah.
It's apparently a hotbed of activity over there. So. But I like the fact that they weren't ineffectual, which I think we've kind of said at times with some of the unit stories tend to be a little So at least this one was like go get them.
Yeah.
I wish the people you were going to get had been a little more efficient and not inept, and I don't know if this was intentional or not. So the bad guy, Oscar Mamana.
I think it's Mamana.
Mamana.
Yeah.
I checked the spelling several times to make sure, but every time I read it, Mana. I threw that extra syllable in there.
I did the same thing,
and it was a little jarring. Where's Mona? Where's? And
you just about did it.
Yeah, I just about did it. Where's Oscar? Do. So the chorus in my head would not shut up. The book.
Kind of hard to take the bad guy seriously.
Yeah. Which I don't think was a serious bad guy.
Another thing I liked about it was young husband. It was kind of nice to have I kind of expected to see him show up in Showstoppers because it kind of set him up as this is kind of his initiation into the 5th Operational Corps. So I'm assuming we're going to see him later.
I kind of like.
Right. I kind of like that.
I kind of like.
Here's a great way to introduce a new character.
Yeah, it does work well for that, and it also works well giving Sally something more to do. And I like I say, I liked Sally in this. I liked her a lot.
Yeah.
I just hope I just wish there had been more we could have done with her. And Lethbridge-Stewart gets to be the hero all the time. Let's let the other side characters get their time to shine. And maybe Sally will eventually in something else. So. Although she's pretty non-existent in Showstoppers.
Yeah. Oh, should we move on? Anything else about this one? Should we move on to Showstoppers?
I don't think so. It's been my least favorite of the short stories for certain.
The Showstoppers. Nothing in the world can stop me now. There's a new show about to hit the airwaves, but Colonel Lethbridge-Stewart won't be tuning in. With the future of the 5th Operational Corps in doubt, he's got enough to worry about. But a plea from an old friend soon finds Lethbridge-Stewart and Ann Travers embroiled in a plot more fantastical than anything on the small screen. Can charismatic star Aubrey Mondegreen can really be in two places at the same time? What lengths will ailing entertainment mogul Billy Lovac go to in order to reach his audience? And is luckless journalist Harold Chorley really so desperate that he'd buy into a story about Nazi conspiracies from a tramp wearing a tinfoil hat? There's something very rotten at the heart of weekend television, and it isn't all due to shoddy scripts and bad effects.
Dun, dun, dun!
I am so glad that I was able to follow up a lackluster story with probably one of the best Lethbridge-Stewart novels to date. I absolutely loved this story. And I loved the fact that it doesn't miss a beat and it stops. There's non-stop something going on, something changing. The most interesting thing about it is I think you figure out, at least I did, and I think every reader should, figured out that Montague was obviously copies of himself in all these different places,
yes.
Especially every time that they talk. So I kept thinking in the back of my head, well, if I figured this thing out this early, what is going to be the big twist to this story? What is going to, and it just continues to entertain the entire time.
How early did you figure it out?
I think when he was on the TV doing the interview, and there was also
Samson talks about
he
saw
exactly.
He
He'd already seen him. Yeah.
How about you?
At least that's when I started to suspect
that he was actually,
but early on, I think
a clone or something.
Yeah,
probably about that same moment. I didn't. I kept trying to figure out what he was.
Yeah.
Through the entire thing, how are they?
Or how is he doing it?
Is it clones? Is it this? Is it that? And then when Lethbridge-Stewart caps the guard that's dragging him into the thing at the end of his initial session, and the ooze starts pouring out of it, then I went, okay, so now I've got to throw out half of the theories that I had formulated at this, because there's something very differently sinister going on here.
Yeah.
And what's weird is I think there was a part of me that kind of thought Routons. There was a part of me that suspected that before Anne brought it up.
I think you're meant to sort of make that seed's already been planted, that Routons have already been introduced to us in this universe. So I think you're meant to maybe kind of formulate that theory early on, because I kind of thought the same thing.
And I had
especially when this is later than the ooze, but especially when Shatter. What's the guy's the
Schottengeist
takes the glove off
and the
tentacle thing and
kills the writer.
At that point, I did another. Oh, is that a Routon thing? So I was like, I'm still buying into the whole. This could be Routons or maybe another species similar to the Routons.
I had to keep talking myself out of it because the trail of breadcrumbs that kept leading me to Routons was so strong.
Yes.
But then I thought about it, and it was like, but they can copy anybody.
Yeah.
Why would they all copy the same guy? So it's either this is something not Routon, or these are the dumbest group of Routons ever. And I could not. It's a page turner. I could not stop going.
The joy of the story is trying to figure out what they're doing and how they're doing it.
I think I read this book in 4 days, guys. 4 days, because I could not put it down. I would read like 6 chapters at a time. I just was so captivating. And the characterizations are wonderful. Samson is so good. We've got Anne Travers again, which is already a favorite of mine.
Her and Samson together are a great team.
A great team. Hanson, the CIA operative, former CIA, the whack job.
Hanson really was a former CIA
absolutely
operative.
Wonderfully written, and so just kept you on the edge of your seat, and kept you on. You're just wondering who is this guy. He's painted as just this bum, this whack job bum on the street, and then Chorley. Oh my gosh, Chorley as just suffering from the repercussions of the Dominic's situation from mutually assured domination, and trying to come to grips with that, and thinking that Lethbridge-Stewart is to blame, and there's something sinister, which sort of kind of has you've realized that this relationship that was starting to bud between him and Lethbridge-Stewart in the Dominator story is completely broke down now. Which, at least from Chorley's point of view. And I love the fact that he has no trust for him, and he thinks he's being played, and that Lethbridge-Stewart is in on it. And it's actually, I love the redemption that Chorley gets at the end. It's almost a backhanded favor that he gets from Lethbridge-Stewart in exposing BB, Big Billy, at the end, but it really kind of serves Chorley something necessary. It doesn't give him everything that he wants, because he thinks it's going to be something more than it is, and so they hold that back just a bit from him. But he does in the end kind of be able to get his life back on track because of that, and it really all comes down to thanks to Lethbridge-Stewart. So Lethbridge-Stewart really ends up being a good guy to this bad guy that Chorley has painted him in this entire scenario. And Montegreen, I thought, was fantastic. And I'll tell you, I think Ben hit the nail on the head, that the only thing that I struggled with, and not in a bad way, was the over-characterized, cartoonish speaking of the fake, say his name again. Schottengeist. I can't remember say his name. It was one of those names that as I read through it, I just went, yeah, that guy. Every time
German.
It just became a picture of a name instead of reading the name in my head. That characterization is spot on, and it's so difficult to read. But after you get used to the cadence of it, you start reading it and seeing the words. Then I just kept thinking of Colonel Clink. I just kept thinking of Colonel Clink in my head from Hogan's Heroes. I don't know if you've ever seen Hogan's Heroes. Just kept thinking of that.
Well, then
character.
they give him Pot Blitz, whatever his name was.
Pot Blitz is
so that's obviously your Schultz.
Although more of a brutish
Yeah.
Schultz than Schultz was. He was kind of lovable, but just the characters that Montegreen was playing. In fact, I wanted more. I wanted
to see more
I wanted
of the
more
variety.
Paperclip. I wanted more Wing Commander
Shepstone.
I wanted more of those. Now, I liked where they went with Shepstone too, as well, because while he was part of this ultimate entity, he does
he bought into it so much.
He did, because that's basically how he's imprinted with. And there was a moment there when he was trying to stay behind when they were getting out of the elevator, and Anne was adamant, and Hanson jumped in and got him out because he wasn't going to let him die again. That I kept thinking, oh, he must be in on this, and so he's trying to figure out a way. But he really wasn't. But you could tell that something inside him felt that he needed to stay, and then the whole getting further away, and he would be winded from running and things like that. But then playing the hero and ultimately giving him his life, that was terrific.
I kept suspecting something was up with him, and what is the deal? Why is he? Oh, he's in on it. It's a ploy. You're going to get trapped again. He's going to do. And they kind of dragged him out of the elevator, and we get across the compound, and then he says, "Well, I'm the hero after all to go open the gate." And he grabs that crowbar, and I'm stealing myself. I was like, okay, here we go. Here, this is the moment. This is where he's going to turn on him. And he goes to insert the crowbar in the thing and drops it. And in that moment, it was like, no, you're just really bad at this.
You're the hero, but a really bad hero.
And then he gets killed. I was like, oh.
Yeah.
As I was beginning to believe in you.
Yep.
Damn it.
I was the exact same. I was like, oh, okay, so I finally believe that you're who you think you are, and then you die. Which, again, I think that works so
that
well
helps
for the
sell
story. It
who he is.
Completely helps
Yeah.
sell. And he does have that heroic moment by
Yeah.
giving his own life. I like that. That was cool.
And I really like Schadengeist. The fact that they fully went there with the character of...
Which one?
well, both Schadengeist. The clone Schadengeist of the... Obviously, they lifted the line in homage to Underwater Menace.
And...
Yeah.
Even so much as the dispatching of the monster was the same as Underwater Menace. It was so much homaging. I was so glad that it had just came out and we got to see it. Otherwise, all of that would have been so lost on me.
Yeah, absolutely. And just it. Well, here's the best thing about this book: there are no aliens.
No,
There are no aliens. It is a Earth being that was discovered and has abilities beyond anything we've ever discovered before. And it's basically used and abused by the real
Schadengeist.
I'm just going to look at you every time. Schadengeist. But he has this weird, twisted idea that it's a mutual symbiotic relationship. And ultimately we find out, because of the way that it reacts, that it isn't 100% mutual.
Yeah.
That it really just wants to get back to its... And it was using Schadengeist to get to that point. The means had to be Schadengeist got what he wanted, the being got what it wanted. I can't remember what they exactly called it. And he was called... They called him as a unit the Factum. But I can't remember. They had a name for the being or the beast that it was.
More or something like that.
Something like that. Anyway,
I have to go back and look.
And I like that Anne kind of gets this gets this suspicion of the jellyfish. Like the guards were almost jellyfish-like, which really does a nice job of setting up the fact that's kind of what this is. So that works really well.
And you can almost
jump in here, guys, because I feel like I'm just going. This was good, and this was good, and this was good, and I love this.
Siphonophore.
That's it, Siphonophore.
You can almost extrapolate that it came from the Silurian era. Like, that's kind of where my brain went with it, because it was underwater and like sea devil. Like, it could have been trapped away and
looks
somehow.
Like any sea devil.
Well, no, but it could have been from that, because we know these other beings that are trapped under the sea or under the earth. that have powers far beyond what we
I
knew.
think if they had nailed it down to the Indocene era, I probably would have maybe.
But it kind of in that vein, at the very least.
Sure.
That's kind of how
I can see that.
That's how I had to wrap my brain around. Oh, it's not an alien. How is this possible then?
I liked clone Schottengeist being as over the top as he was. He had that. I don't know if I can say Saturday morning cartoon. We are talking about a Nazi.
But he was cartoonish. He was very cartoonish.
Very cartoonish.
Yeah.
Very. Yeah. But then real Schottengeist was almost, what was the guy's name from season 2 of Heroes? The one who took over Hydra. Who was a Nazi from the scientist guy. Heroes? Or not Heroes. S.H.I.E.L.D.
What's his face?
I know
Neil Diamond? No, Diamond...
I missed Neil Diamond in season 2
Neil
altogether.
Diamond was the furthest thing from a Nazi that you could get.
You know the one, the gray-haired guy with the little glasses.
The guy from Dollhouse.
Oh, yeah, that was him.
Okay, well, yes. I know who you're talking about, not in reference to Dollhouse, but yes. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, but he kind of had that element.
A bit of that vibe, yes.
To him that was like suddenly... I mean, don't get me wrong. Cartoon Schottengeist was scary.
Reed Diamond, that's the actor's name.
Okay, I wouldn't have got that. But a cartoon Schottengeist was scary in his cartoon way.
Yeah.
But then when this guy shows up, all of a sudden it was like, oh, never mind the fact you have a jellyfish attached to your back, with this big thing. This guy is the legit threat, and I like the fact that these were all just different elements of his personality and how they were able to differentiate between the two, despite really kind of being that it was the same person.
Well, and the nice thing is that he has a global accent. He doesn't have that stereotypical Nazi accent or German accent that has come through comedy and television, things like that. He has that world accent, and that makes his character even more realistic in the sense that, of course, this many years on, I mean, only 20 years, but he had been, enveloped into different programs. The CIA obviously had a program, and they, so he had kind of adapted to his means, and so he comes across that way, which is even scarier than the fact that he was so genius and manipulative and calculating and things like that. So.
And I love the fact that Hansen was right the whole time. I love that he wasn't just a nut job that believed that he was tracking down this old Nazi. He really was tracking down this old Nazi,
and there was a reason why he was a nut job.
And they messed with his brain, and the fact that the aluminum foil actually did help.
And what a great way of pulling this unbelievably well-constructed tapestry. That you've got the TV show thread, and then all of a sudden you've got the clone thread. That these are all elements of the same guy, and all of these separate kind of things they're not separate. They're all facets of the same story. But then when he comes out and says, "No, there's a Nazi war criminal on the loose," and you're like, "What?"
You don't believe him at first.
I know. It's like, what?
Yeah.
And so then when Schottengeist shows up as who you would presume is the Nazi war criminal, you're like, okay, dude's just nuts.
Yeah.
It's just, I don't know what I do. But no, it actually
is a Nazi
war criminal.
And there was Shepstone that was the hero and died, and
which
so well constructed to pull all the pieces together at the end.
I like how Shepstone was a thinly veiled cartoon version of Lethbridge-Stewart.
Yes.
Oh, certainly.
Yeah.
Even with the little pencil mustache and
And it's probably a good thing that those two never had a scene together.
Yeah.
That'd be a little too meta for the...
I think... I don't know. Anybody else read Schottengeist's dialogue out loud?
There were times I did...
Not necessarily for help, but just because it was fun.
Well, mostly for help.
I mostly did it for help. I think I would mouth it out loud.
And there were some words that I had no idea what he was trying to say.
There were sometimes I'd have to go back and read the dialogue again to make sure I was getting what he was saying. I
stood in front of the mirror and recited speeches.
The first couple of times that I read passages in his speech, I kept thinking, oh, this is really kind of cornball. I really did. I almost went that direction. And then the more that it continued to play out and more they were developing his character,
You could tell it was intentional.
This is intentional. This has to be this way. And ultimately that's paid off. Yeah, this is a caricature of something that is based on something else. It's just...
I liked what you said about Chorley, too. I didn't, for all of the love that I had for Mutually Assured Domination, I really didn't kind of take into account that, one of my favorite parts of it was Chorley, who became this really great character and then got discarded. I never really gave too much truck to the end of that story where it's like, what is going to happen with poor Chorley? I just knew that I enjoyed the ride and that was it. And so when this one picks up and his mind is gone and he's an alcoholic and it's just, I felt a little bit...
His life is in shambles.
Aww. Yeah. I didn't think about the ramifications of the fun ride I had, It's,
it's really nice to follow up on those things. The
fact
that it wasn't just a left... It wasn't just, everything's hunky-dory.
Well, I felt almost bad for enjoying Mutually Assured Domination because look what they did to poor Chorley. So it was nice to see him get at least the beginnings of a turnaround to kind of get back into the, and the relationship that he has with Lethbridge-Stewart, even though on his side it's, he's to blame for all, my memory loss and this, that, and the other thing. Technically, I guess true. Yeah. But I like the fact that Lethbridge-Stewart still sees Chorley as a tool and a journalist, something to be kept at arm's length, even though he kind of sort of has this weird begrudging admiration for the guy.
But ultimately, too, in the middle of this, he still wants to keep him at arm's length because he's like, he can't quite be trusted. I still can't, give him everything. But then ultimately using him when Chorley says he has to go to the bathroom, and he's like, okay. He's using Chorley, and Chorley's unaware.
That was such a great
It's funny because Chorley's like, okay. So he goes off, and then he says, well, having to use the bathroom was a good ploy to get out of here. Of course, I did have a full bladder because so he really did have to go to the bathroom, and also was using the excuse to get away and explore and nose around. I thought that was kind of clever too. He kind of admits, but yeah, I did have a full bladder too. But
just the fact that Chorley's got his okay, I'm gonna go over here and do this thing, and they're all like, all right, and then everything's timed out, and Lethbridge-Stewart's for it says, well, of course I knew he was going to sneak away. It's the earliest opportunity. Duh. Just such good stuff there. But, Samson was great.
I like that he's going to stick around and join the fifth.
Yeah. I was...
Samson's a fascinating character because he's every bit of that macho character that you kind of place, especially in the 1960s. But he's also not so much of that macho character that he doesn't have some of that soft side. Yeah. He also does, while he comes off a little bit flirtatious with Anne, he never seems to be very misogynistic or very chauvinistic or anything like that. So he comes off as this really strong male character, but not quite alpha male and not quite, especially by giving him the weakness. The one weakness which I think really grounds his character was the fact that he was scared of heights. And when it first
and Anne's reaction to that.
When it was first put in there, I sort of thought, okay, what was the point of Cooper thinking that he needed to give this character a weakness? And then after you're done reading it, you realize that it speaks volumes for the character in the sense that it paints this picture of he's not this complete, invulnerable guy. He has faults, and this is one of them, and he has to struggle through that, and that really makes Anne shine in the sense that she does not have that weakness. So she ends up having to be the leader through that and push him through it, and I liked that. I thought that was really cleverly done.
Everything that we didn't get with Sally in the short, we got with Anne in this one, which was great. I liked that her descent into madness, as it were, with everything and the craziness that was going on at the studio, pretty much all culminated from, I am bored out of my mind. There's nothing to do. They won't give me the toys that I need. You want to come with me? Sure, let's go do something. And then the ball just kind of and took off.
Her reaction
Her and
to
Driver Evans just sitting in the office watching TV. Well, if you'd given me the stuff I needed, I wouldn't have to be here watching television with Evans.
And the nice little dig later when he goes, "Is there any way we can improve this?" And she says, "Well, if I'd gotten the radio spectrometer I asked for, I could have, noted."
Doing her little digs the whole time.
And her reactions when she's going through the test chambers of, I don't know how to knit.
And so,
How sexist can you be? I can't cook. I
she
can barely
cleverly
cook.
comes up with the knot system so
she's
that
gotta
she has
just
something
do
that at least can
and then
prove.
tucks the knitting
Yeah.
needle away to use later. Constantly looking for weapons.
And then moving into and she's very grateful that the next door opens because or after they get through, and I think the wing commander Shepstone comes through, and she realizes, thank goodness this happened now, so that I didn't have to go to the next room, which was child rearing.
Yeah.
She's like, she's relieved that it ended early enough that she didn't have to go through several of these different stereotypes for females. The gas thing, prying the thing off. Well, first of all, keeping the crochet needle, which was genius.
Yeah,
and then prying the knife off so that she could use that later. I mean, it was just gathering the tools that she needed to survive.
And then calling back to it later when she's up in the radio tower of, well, I don't have a knitting needle. I've actually got the tools I need.
Got the tools that I need. She shoves the screwdriver in there.
I almost... She used the screwdriver to get through the lock, and she used the screwdriver to get through the bomb. She used the screwdriver to get up into the tower. She used the screwdriver on the transmitter. And every time, I almost was waiting for her to say something about, this could be a little more sonic. I mean, it became such a great... It's a screwdriver. That's all it is.
Yeah.
Handle. But, man... When you're used to dealing with knitting needles and knives, all of a sudden it's like, no, I've got a tool. Look at me go. I'm tearing stuff up.
I also love the fact that Bishop and his team get a quick moment when they when they go to Plan B. And they hear the gunfire, and so they just come in like the cavalry.
Such a unit moment, too.
Yeah, very much so.
That's totally something Benton would have done. Oh, okay, let's go.
Were the guys that Bishop spotted that were on the front lines of that also were the guys that put on the ruse to they kept talking about these 2 or 3 guys at the beginning they kept noticing, and that when they dress up and they kidnap BB and then they have the fake shootout between units so that BB thinks that he's been, which I thought was so cleverly done.
As soon as they pulled into the warehouse and then there was this massive shootout, I went, aha,
Yeah.
I know what you're doing and this is genius.
Yeah. Well, because they kind of said that's what they were going to do without saying that's what they were going to do, just a chapter ahead of that, and then they pull it off, and you're like, okay, I know what's going on here. So they and even towards the end, they make mention of these. Do you think that's Benton and?
I sure hope so.
And,
I
Yates
suppose so.
and maybe somebody else, maybe
Osgood,
maybe, I don't know. They kept making a point, at least in 2 or 3 times, to
I only remember the second
give
reference.
these faceless references to these guys.
The nameless guys who cannot be named,
I'm
I'm sure, because of
hoped
rights
that maybe
deal,
those were the guys that were... Maybe one of them was Bartlett, and the other one was... Collins. Not Collins. It was Shaun something else, wasn't it? I don't remember how... Oh, it was Collins.
It was Collins.
It was Collins.
But...
maybe it was Bartlett. Collins.
Yeah, no, I as much as I have... The only complaint that I can have about Samson being such a great character, and I'm looking forward to him being a new addition, is unfortunately Bill had to take a back seat.
Yeah.
While they kind of built him up, which I get and I understand that because we're building
I
the team.
was actually fine with it this time,
yeah,
though, because we've had Bill. So we had, obviously Bishop was built up and developed as a character in Forgotten Son. We didn't get too much Bill in Schizoid Earth, but we do get very heavy with Bishop in
Beast of Fang Rock.
Thank you, Beast of Fang Rock. Then he's kind of sidelined again. So
but he's got it kind of alternates because he had a
Moonblink, then he had a large part.
Yeah.
So I was maybe based on that pacing, I was okay with the fact that Bishop gets sidelined.
And I also really liked how at the end Samson kind of recognized, there's a little something there between Ann and Bishop. I'm not going to interfere with that. I really like that aspect because that could have easily been a love triangle or a competing. I want her. Macho stuff, and it's not.
There could have been a lot of posturing there.
Yeah,
and they didn't go that direction. Well, and I think Anne even notices something about Bill that even kind of maybe endears her more to him, and there's something that's said there near the end that kind of endears her more to Bill. And so I kind of got the impression that she wasn't falling for Samson either. It was more she had this mutual respect.
Samson was kind of falling for Anne, but he's not the kind of guy that's going to try to interfere and get in the way.
Exactly. They just knocked it out of the park with this book. This is a fine job.
And then to cap it off, the epilogue.
Well, and the one other bit.
Finally,
he's the brigadier.
The one other bit in the climax with giving us dwarf store alloy.
Dwarf store alloy.
I was a little excited by that.
I did this. I read that and went, "What? They did not go there. What? It was really cool." That's not copyrighted.
And knowing that it was at Area 51, it would explain the CIA and how. Yeah, totally on board. Bought all of that. No problem.
I didn't even question it.
I think the other thing, speaking of the Dwarf Star Ally, I think the other thing that I really like about this is while the jellyfish part of the symbiotic unit of the Factum was sort of responsible for all of this, it ultimately had one thing, and that was to go back to its living secluded in the darkness.
Yeah.
And so I'm glad that it was able to remove itself from everything and get into that dark story where it could live out the rest of its life, and nobody ever in that chamber where nobody would even know it was there except for obviously Lethbridge-Stewart, who really is the only one that does know it's there because he was the only one left surviving down in that room, because even Hanson dies down there as well.
And what a great footnote to this horrible threat that we get an inkling from, at least from the Lethbridge-Stewart's impression, that it's not really a threat. It's just been forced into being a threat because of these external forces.
Yes. Yeah.
And that we, as fans, know what this Dwarf Store alloy is capable of, You're sealed in. That's it. That's the end of it.
Right.
Okay, I can leave it alone in there.
Yeah,
I'm not
absolutely.
going to worry about leaving this threat underneath.
Well, and the fact that Lethbridge-Stewart also recognizes, I can't tell Hamilton about this, because he would then go and unearth it and cause a whole sorts of issues.
Which is funny, because that's completely against Lethbridge-Stewart that decides to blow up the Silurian complex much to the Third Doctor's chagrin, because we just need to, we got to stamp on it now. So it kind of does conflict with that. But
there's also plenty of time in between where he could learn to not trust him as much.
There's also a difference between one jellyfish and an army.
The other thing that helps, though, is that the visions in his mind that he gets of the levers that are needed, first the one that floods the base, and the second the lever that will get him out of there, to me, were telegraphed to him from the entity.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
So he realizes that at that point, that was an ally. It was someone doing something for him. So this is in his character to give back to that and say, we're safe, you're tucked away, we don't have to worry about you anymore. I can live with that. So that kind of soft sells the whole fact that we get the brig later on down the line. Because the Silurians had no concessions. They were.
They were.
Yeah. He was going on. The doctors said it was going to be okay, and he was like, "No, they have not done anything for us. Blow them up."
And that's why this doesn't conflict with that for me.
Yeah.
And I like Moonblink. I like the fact that the quote unquote alien was being used and wasn't necessarily a bad guy, and the fact that they didn't have to blow it up to resolve the issue. I like that change of pace. Oh, I kind of hope the Grandfather Infestation returns back to a baddie, because that's 2 books in a row.
Yeah, if you do 3 in a row, then it's kind of like, okay, guys, come
Unless
on.
this is the run of
that's the
good
theme
guys
for the
for this
for the book.
first 4 of this line, and then all right, then
all relatively terrestrial, because even Moonblink
is
they came from somewhere else and colonized, but it's still
lunar based,
rather terrestrial.
I started this early, really. Normally I'm, the week of, and that's when I get to sit down and read it. And I was ahead of the game this time. I started the book and finished it yesterday. Not because I just didn't have the time to really devote to it, but in a way that I think helped my enjoyment of it, because as much as I wanted to digest the next part of it and was ready to go, I just couldn't.
Well, when you get the gaps in between in reading like that, you get to percolate on what you've read and anticipate what's to come, and as opposed to sometimes, at least for me, sitting down and reading large chunks at a time. Sometimes, because I'm reading so much of it, I tend to forget parts that happened earlier in the chunk I've been reading.
You don't get a chance to digest it as well, because it's
Yeah.
just bam, and it's all there.
Yeah.
See, I'm a little different, because if I spread out a reading of a book too long, sometimes by the time I pick it back up, I've kind of forgotten
It's got to be
what was
just the
coming
right
before.
amount of time.
Yeah,
So-
there's a sweet spot that you got to hit in there.
But also, I was true to form when I said earlier, I couldn't put this thing down. I just kept going and going and going and going, which is probably a
The
good thing, because I
chapters-
did start it late, but and would have had. But I didn't feel like I plowed through it yesterday, probably the biggest chunk of it yesterday, because I would read it. And then I'd put it down, and I'd think, I could go another chapter. And I'd read it, and I'd put it down. And then I would be forced to have to, we got to go do something. Or we're going, the family's going to do something. So I'd go away, and then I'd come back, and I'd sit back down and go, okay, I got about an hour now. And then that hour would turn into 2 hours, because I had plowed through 6 more chapters. And I was like, oh,
it just,
my gosh.
I think it allowed me to savor it this time out. It's like I really hit the perfect storm of as much as I wanted to, because I would just and read, and then I'd have to go do something. And so I would have to put it down, and a couple of days would go by before I could pick it back up again, and it would just sit there calling to me, "Come read me." It's like, I'm trying, and such a just compelling.
The other
read.
interesting part of this is this story really takes place over the course of a few days.
Oh, yeah.
We're talking, what was it, 18 chapters? I mean,
20
some chapters.
21,
over
I
the
think.
course of 2 or 3 days. And it actually it's like 2.5 days, because I think it starts the night before, or 2 nights before. But the interesting thing to me is, I think the reason why I could continue to go on chapter to chapter is because I'm done with 3 chapters, and we still haven't got out of the studio yet. And I'm like, what is... they got it. How are they going to get out? So I go to another chapter. We're still not out of the studio. Okay, we finally escaped, and we got away. We're going back to the studio. Wait a minute.
It's written so well that I hit that halfway point where you get this kind of climax. We've escaped the studio, and we're out, and we're doing the thing, and it was like, yay! And you meet up with Lethbridge-Stewart, and it feels like wrapped up, and then
we get
suddenly
the
you realize...
we get the debrief, it's like...
and then you suddenly realize you still got a half a book to go, because they haven't dealt with the threat yet. That was just, we just escaped the studio. Oh, man.
We've discovered the threat. Now we have to deal with the threat. That's the 2 acts here. We've discovered the threat. Now we have to discover. And not to mention, Samson and Anne get away from the studio twice, because they got away once and were captured and taken back.
That's true.
Because they went there to investigate. They get out. Then they're run down by the stormtroopers, who take them back and put them in experiment. And, of course... Hanson, unfortunately, he never got away the first time, because he had snuck in with Chorley. Chorley managed to get away. But Chorley comes back with Lethbridge-Stewart. So Chorley ends up going back as well. I forgot. I totally forgot about that. Chorley was in once, went back with Lethbridge-Stewart, because he was trying to convince him something was going on here. What was the other neat thing, too, was the fact that he can't... The Lethbridge-Stewart was still concerned about Anne, but he had enough. He had in the back of his mind, well, she can take care of herself. Samson's a capable guy. He knows him from his past, and he kept thinking, okay, we're checking on them. We're seeing if something's going on with this studio. But he'd call back and say, has Miss Travers checked back in yet? No. But he still had it in his mind that, well, she can take care of herself. She's very, very capable. And so he never felt like he had to rush in there and find her. No, I'm not leaving here until I find Travers. He just went in there, kind of did his investigation. And when he goes, and it ends up paying off, because she and Samson do end up getting
and the way he approaches it feels like, if it were Bishop in there, he would have done the exact same thing.
Yeah, exactly.
It doesn't feel like he's doing it because she's a woman.
Right, exactly.
There's also that nifty bit at the end in the debrief section where, after chastising them for running off on their own, that he then turns around and says, by the way, we need some sort of shortwave communications thing so that we're not calling the home office trying to relay messages. And it's a wonderful bit, because it's just a cool, and then you realize, that would be really handy. And then you kind of get into Yeah, we didn't have cell phones or anything like that. And I kind of think back on it's weird because I bridge both sides of that. I lived in a world where you had to check your messages.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
Well,
What's this? It's a pager. It lets me know that somebody's trying to call me.
Even
what is that worthless piece of technology?
Even in the unit era of the show, they are using radios from time to time.
Oh, yeah.
But there is a lot of times where Lethbridge-Stewart having to call back to home base in order to check in. Has
the doctor come in yet? No, he hasn't. Okay.
Exactly. I mean, so there's still they did kind of settle that and fix that a little bit so that the intercommunication, whenever they're in the field, can be done over walkie-talkie. But they're still having to call into the base to check on each other sometimes. So, a great book.
It really is.
In fact, this is right up there with Beast of Fang Rock. For me, it really is. I can't say that it's better because I don't know that it. I enjoyed it. I don't know. I hate ranking things, but it definitely is up there, right there with Beast and Forgotten Son, because I really enjoyed Forgotten Son as well. But even the Dominators one, it's just this whole series has been so good, but this one was in top form. It's top 4. Yeah, absolutely. I'd say it's top 3 for certain.
Beast, Mutual Assured Domination, and Showstoppers are my top 3. I'm not going to rank them within that top 3.
I think within that top 3, I'm the same way. Yeah,
I'm not going to rank them within that top 3, but they're all up there in the. Such good. And I agree. I didn't mean to cut you off.
No.
The epilogue.
Yeah, the epilogue.
We finally get the promotion.
Jonathan Cooper is the author of this one. Well, he can come back and write a lot more Lethbridge-Stewart.
Absolutely.
There's also a very fun character profile at the end on Samson.
I read most of that.
Every time they do one of those, I make sure I go in and because you just get that much more of the character as you go. Which will help, because when they do a character profile, that character's obviously coming back down.
Yeah, there wasn't a character profile for Hanson.
Anything else you guys want to touch on this book?
Thoroughly enjoyable.
Really enjoyable. A lot of fun.
Yeah. Just I wonder if the setting, the near Hollywood setting of the studio, if that maybe called to us a little bit more than
and there were times where some of that felt like it was kind of poking fun at Doctor Who itself.
Oh, totally. Blimey.
Oh, yeah.
That TV show is...
Yeah, I think...
and
not
more
going overboard.
Yeah.
By just giving little nuggets of...
and we associate because what we know from 60s British television is is predominantly Doctor Who.
Careful, Keith, your accent is showing.
It's not just Doctor Who. It's any British television from that time period that it's kind of poking fun at.
Yes, absolutely. All right, well, Shaun, what do we got coming up on the schedule?
Well, next week on the schedule is some Colin Baker action in Mind Warp, which means yet another chance to watch Brian Blessed go nuts and destroy a lab.
Yay! Expect lots of dive tweets.
Should be a spirited Friday Night Who. And then some Titan Comics coming up next week, because obviously we've already reviewed Mind Warp. So we're going to be doing the 11th Doctor, issues 6 through 10 in the second season, which will be nice to get back to that story arc with the where we left off last time, the reveal of River Song, and it was like, ah! So getting back to that. And then also Big Finish, mainline story number 84, The Nowhere Place, which, if I've done my scheduling properly, I believe is a Colin Baker episode. So I don't have that right in front of me, so I don't know, but I think it is. Beyond that, the following week, we've got Neil Gaiman's Nightmare in Silver with Matt Smith for Friday Night Who. And then our Beyond the Doctor, which, did we ever officially determine what we were doing for that yet? Or?
I don't think so.
We should probably make a decision on that so we can let people know.
We up to...
I think we collectively
11.
agreed, but I don't think we officially determined. Pride and Prejudice and Zombies.
That is officially what we're going to do.
That's what we decided finally to do. Yeah.
Okay. Well, we're going to watch Pride, Prejudice, and Zombies. Pride and Prejudice and Zombies.
Yeah.
For our Matt Smith Beyond the Doctor. So that'll be our review for that week.
Yay.
Yay. Well, I thought he was going to go one more week.
Oh, you want to go one more week?
Well, we know what it is. So.
Oh, well, it's David Tennant and Gridlock. Because we're going to do an adversary archive. That's why you want to do it. You're excited about this.
I feel like we pushed this one down the road for some reason.
Adversary
Well, we
archive
did
for
a
the
little bit.
Macra. But it's double duty because not only is it an adversary archive, but we're also going to be doing a Lost in Time with the Macra Terror. Now, none of the episodes of this story exist, unfortunately. So we will be tackling that via the Target novelization. It was a Target novelization, wasn't it? Yeah.
Yes, it was.
And then
Are any of them not Target novelizations aside from Shada?
I suppose that's a good
City
point.
of Death.
Oh yeah, City of Death. They didn't do a Target one for City
No.
of
City of
No,
Death
that's
never,
because
never
that's
been
why they did it.
novelized.
Yeah,
It's never
Douglas
officially been
Adams one,
novelized.
so
Then.
he wouldn't let them do it. Or they couldn't
It
pay him
costs
enough
too
to
much
novelize
to
it.
do it.
I don't know. I just assumed that it's a Target novelization. Okay. I just kind of
Yeah,
they're all Target
all of them
novelizations,
are,
aren't they?
yeah.
Yeah. Good point. You say novelization, I say Target. That's how that works. But then also with the recon from the loose cannon folk for the audio, so we will be tackling that as well, and then some more exciting stuff on the way.
All right. Well, if you're not already supporting us as a Patreon supporter, well, why not? Go to our website, travelingvortex.com, and on the right-hand side of the page, there is a place where you can click to support us on Patreon, and 100% of those proceeds go back into this podcast.
They're
And
about
if-
to go back in this podcast to pay for the server again for this year.
that's
So
coming back around. So, and if you are already supporting us, we thank you so much, and maybe consider to give us a little more. Twist your arm just a little bit more. No, we certainly appreciate everything and anything that anybody can give to support the show, donate to support the show. And of course, there are other links on the website as well where you can purchase things, and a portion of those proceeds go back into this show as well. Anything else we haven't touched on that we need to finish up this week?
I just want to throw out our thanks to the folks over at Candy Jar for allowing us to continue to review the Lethbridge-Stewart books as they come out, and keep up the fine work, gentlemen. We're enjoying them.
Absolutely. All right, well, if that's going to do it for this week, until next week, I'm Glenn.
I'm Shaun.
I'm Keith.
Cheers.
Good night, everybody.
Be seeing ya.
Nothing in the world can stop me now!
You have been listening to Traveling the Vortex. Doctor Who and all of its associated programs are owned and trademarked by the BBC. No infringement is intended or implied.